we last held in January. I have to say, and those of you who were at those town hall meetings know the extent of concern that I heard from my constituents about the proposal for a floating liquefied natural gas plant in the Saanich Inlet, which was basically an extreme degree of concern. Now, I was reporting to you on what I would be doing even before those town hall meetings last January. I want you to know that in my first meeting with the new Minister of Transportation, Mark Garneau, my first meeting with him was in November, and I started pressing him then on the need for regulating in Canada setback and hazard zones for the movement of LNG tankers. Those regulations exist in the United States. We need them in Canada, so I've been pressing our Minister of Transportation on that, and I've been pressing our Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Catherine McKenna, on the need to have standard regulations, not one specific plant or another, but for all facilities on coastlines, that we have closed-loop systems and not allow once-through cooling where water that's been warmed and chlorinated is not back into the inlet. So I have taken the position publicly. I think the first time I said so publicly was at the AGM of the Saanich Inlet Protection Society, but it may have been sooner. Basically, the first time anyone asked me about this proposal, I felt very comfortable saying no. It was a very bad idea for many, many reasons. But I'm not the expert here tonight to share with you what those reasons will be. I just want to do some introductions and lay down some ground rules. So ground rules in my town hall meetings are that all comments are treated with respect. All of us are here as concerned citizens. This is not a partisan gathering. And we want to make sure that in a session like this where we have experts and knowledgeable people here, that they get a chance to speak, and that all of you get your opportunity to put your concerns forward. So now I'll begin where I should have begun from the beginning. I want to start by acknowledging that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Saanich people and express our enormous gratitude and respect to particularly our Chief Don Tom, who's here with us, will be our first speaker. So I want to say Haishka, raise my hands to you in honor to all the First Nations people and the territories on which those of us who are not First Nations are privileged to be able to reside. We're going to hear from three very key participants, experts in this issue. First, Chief Don Tom, Chief of the Sartlik First Nation. Then, taking the big scale approach first, we're very privileged to be joined here tonight by Andrew Nikiforuk, who is a nationally known and best-selling author and journalist, and has recently moved from Calgary, saw the light, and moved to Vancouver. And then we're going to hear from someone that many of you have heard in other recent and public meetings on this issue. I first heard Dr. Owen Finn presenting on the issue of LNG at a very, very good town hall meeting that was held in the Brentwood Bay Community Center some months ago. So we're very fortunate, but to keep things on time, I'm going to keep myself to time. And we're going to have presentations trying to be about 10 minutes. I'm going to try to be fairly strict but not ruthless. To have the first half hour be 10 minutes from Chief Don Tom, 10 minutes from Andrew Nikiforuk, and 10 minutes from Dr. Owen Finn. And you'll be able to tell very, very quickly that 10 minutes does not do justice to what they have to share with us, but we want to make sure we have time to hear from you. And I hope you appreciate that this is a security-free event. Welcome. I have the great honor of introducing Chief Don Tom, Chief of Sartlik First Nation.
Siem de Solquen, Siem de Siea, Hai Tsevka, Quetzi Tak Tatulnamet and the Quail. My dear respected elders, family, it is a pleasure to be here this evening with you. My traditional name, family name is Quiltlinston, and I am the elected chief in Joplin. I see some familiar faces from earlier this week. Good to see you again. I'm very pleased to see that we didn't have security at the door. And that was probably $10,000 worth of security right there. But I appreciate the opportunity to take part in today with Elizabeth's Town Hall, and it gives me the opportunity just to give you the perspective that we have in our community, and I reiterate that it's not just myself or Sartliff that's opposed to this project. It's also the other Saanich Peninsula bands, First Nations, which is Sycam, Pawcatchin, and Sayouch. Each of us are opposed to this because it's right for us in Sartliff specifically. It's right across the waters from us, and it is just looking at the drawing, I would not want to wake up and see that every morning. That is so ugly, very ugly. And we're opposed to every aspect of this proposal. We are opposed to the subsea gas pipeline. We are opposed to the tanker traffic, and we are opposed to the floating liquefied natural gas facility. To us, it's a reckless and dangerous project that does not benefit many. It would benefit, I'm sure, Steelhead's board members and their stakeholders, but I just don't see the benefit for us. It would not help my community one bit. And the approach that we take with Steelhead LNG and Malhead LNG is our established rights, which are inherent rights to begin with, which is given by the Creator, which allows us to belong to these lands and these territories. There was a point in time where the animals were human, and we were all human, and they transformed very easily. And so we hold this sacred relationship with Fellow-Mitchton, our which you know as orcas, our fish. We know them as our relatives because they were at one time human, just like us. And what we're concerned about is, who's bringing forward the voice of those who can't speak. And I think if you look at, and if you've ever heard some of the recordings that they have in the Salish Sea and some of the tankers that go through, it is awful. I could not imagine. I can with all this airport traffic here, but I couldn't imagine, trying to make your way through the Salish Sea. You have all that noise from the tankers that go through there already. But I just want to say that this would jeopardize our way of life. This would jeopardize your way of life also. The potential for an explosion, you look at what the U.S. classifies this as, and they classify it as a class 2, and that's concerning because it has the potential for terrorism. That's one of the primary concerns is if tanker traffic comes through here, what sort of safety measures are in place to ensure that there is no terrorism of an explosion of a tanker or somebody who wants to do such a thing? I couldn't imagine it, but it is a concern, and which is why we are also opposed to it. But going back to our position on Douglas Treaty, our rights and LNG, and if you saw them here earlier this week, they continue to deny the rights that we have here in Saanich. Absolutely deny. The question was asked to them, how can you proceed forward with a project like this when a proponent was stopped in Saanich Bay Marina and our rights were established there? That clearly said that the province cannot issue any permits or licenses that would infringe upon our Douglas Treaty rights or the continuity of our Douglas Treaty, that the province cannot interfere in matters of our Douglas Treaty, that they do not have jurisdiction. And let me say again that Premier Christy Clark and her Liberal government does not have jurisdiction to approve such a project in the Saanich Inlet. And that is the position not only for Sark, but the other for 3 other Saanich chiefs here in the inlet. Now, the argument that they made in the Saanich and Bay Marina case was that is the Douglas Treaty, is it qualified by unoccupancy? And we proved in court, and let me just read a paragraph from the court decision in the Saanich and Bay Marina case. It says, while the right does not amount to the proprietary interest in the seabed, nor a contractual right to a fishing ground, it does protect the Indians against infringement of their right to carry on the fishery as they have done for centuries in the shelter of Saanich Bay. And so I just want to make that point that our treaty rights are unqualified, and any industry, any government who tries to infringe upon our rights to hunt and fish us formally. And the fishing, it's not just limited to the practice of fishing. Our Douglas Treaty protects also the environment in the water. And part of that Saanich and Bay Marina case is that the proponent tried to make the case that eelgrass doesn't make a difference. Who's going to miss the eelgrass? And in the court case, it was proven that, how we won that was to prove, yes, saving the eelgrass counts. And it protects and preserves our right to hunt and fish as formally. And if any proponent or government tries to interfere with that, they're out of their jurisdiction, and that our Douglas Treaty supersedes that. So I want to make it very clear that this applies to Steelhead LNG and Malahat LNG, that our waters are protected by the Douglas Treaty. And I sure hope they hear that, because if they don't, they're going to be subject to a lot of liability in the end. And that's just a fact and how we think. And and I want to say that Malahat people are Douglas Treaty people as well. They hold the same rights, and they're a community that holds the same rights. And I don't know if they've gone to their community for consent to move forward with such a project. I just don't know. I sure hope they did. If they didn't, then I think that puts them up for cancellation, because our Douglas Treaty rights were there prior to an Indian Act Chief and Council. So to me, it's, our rights are established. We're not just making up these things about Douglas Treaty. They're established, they're recognized and affirmed by the Crown and at every level of court. We've gone to the Supreme Court many times to prove our rights, so they're established. So Steelhead LNG, I sure hope either they wake up and realize this soon, or, to me, it's the end of their proposal. So, I just want to say what a great opportunity it is to be here with you today. And I just want to do one thing, and I just want to invite you to stand with me. If you do not agree with this proposal, please just stand with me. Thank you very much.
After the four, do you need any to your ancestors for negotiating one of the very best, strongest, best, unqualified treaties, yay, Douglas treaties.
Well, good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank Elizabeth for the opportunity to share a few more thoughts about LNG in this province, which reminds me of many of the precautionary things I said about the tar sands 10 years ago in Alberta. There are 21 projects currently proposed. Not one has yet reached a final business decision. The reason for that has to do with economics. The economics stink, to be quite, the forecast was that a million BTU or unit of natural gas would be around $15. So all of these schemes to export methane from BC emerged nearly 10 years ago when prices were that high. The reality is today prices are between 6 and 7. What most projects need in this province to be economic is 10 and 11 per unit. And what the spot price for LNG today, I checked, is around $4. Okay, so nothing works under the current economic schedule. Yet at the same time, the volume of methane production in this province has increased dramatically, while the revenue stream generated by the extraction of natural gas has declined precipitously. The only time any money was made in this province from LNG was back in 2006, 2007, 2008, when the province scored big on land lease sales totaling several billions of dollars. The current royalty regime for natural gas in this province is among the lowest in North America. The owners of the resource, British Columbians, made but $151 million last year. At the same time, the government gave away back to industry in the form of credits $186 million. So do the math. The only reason there is a shale gas industry at this point in time in northern BC is because it is subsidized by you, the taxpayer. Subsidized water, subsidized geoscience, subsidized road credits, subsidized pipeline credits, and a government that will bend over backwards. I was struck by the fact that several years ago I came across a PowerPoint by members of government that said this: how is the BC government actively facilitating investment in shale gas? Royalties lowered, regulations reduced, improved road access, high-quality geoscience, full access to drill core and cuttings, service sector strategy, and on and on. The model you have for shale gas development in this province is essentially a Soviet one almost entirely funded, promoted, and advocated by one political party. But lastly, I mean, just about every number the government has used on LNG has turned out to be false or a lie or totally inappropriate. The government has promised that the industry will generate $100 billion in savings for the owners of the resource. So far, they have generated nothing, but to make it look a little bit better than that, they took $100 million from revenue going to the medical services plan, and they set it aside in their LNG savings fund. A lot of places would characterize that as fraud. The last few comments I want to make really have to deal with the technology behind all of this. 90% of all oil and gas wells in this province today are being fracked. What is fracking, you ask? Fracking is a highly disruptive, unpredictable technology that shatters rock formations with extreme force. This is not an innovation. This is merely application of brute force. And when certain forms of brute force don't work, you up the pressure and the power. So in northern BC, you'll take anywhere from 5 million to 10 million to 15 million to 25 million gallons of water, and you will inject it at very high speeds, 1 to 2 miles underneath the ground, along with chemicals and sand, and the sand is injected to keep fractures open in the rock. The enormous amount of water injected is to break open that rock with either new fractures or to find the old fractures in the shell formation. And the force is so extraordinary that industry cannot control where all the fractures will go. They cannot control what other natural fractures they might connect to. They cannot control what faults these fractures might connect to. So here's something that an executive of one of the big fracking companies in the United States recently said. He's an executive with Baker Hughes. He said 70% of frack jobs do not reach their production targets. In other words, the fracks are going out of zone in other places. 60% of all fracture stages are ineffective. And lastly, 73% of all operators say they do not know enough about the subsurface and the faults that lie in the ground. Now, many of you might have experienced the earthquake back in, when was it, January, the 4.6. That was Mother Nature making an earthquake, but the fracking industry is now making earthquakes greater than that in northern BC. Since 2006, this industry has generated more than 1,000 man-made earthquakes throughout northeastern British Columbia. Many of these earthquakes have been a magnitude of 3 or greater. Progress Energy, which is owned by Petronas, recently was responsible for 4.6 magnitude earthquake. Respal, a firm from Spain, just across the border in Fox Creek, was responsible for 4.8 magnitude earthquake. These are the largest earthquakes ever generated by hydraulic fracturing on the planet. And scientists are very concerned about these earthquakes and the threats they pose to public safety, to dams, to roads, and building infrastructure, which was not built to sustain these kinds of earthquakes in northern BC. Here's Kathy Ryan, one of the top seismic hazard people in the country at the University of Calgary. Major challenges exist in understanding the relationship between injection volume, rate, reservoir pressure, and induced seismicity, as well as how to identify critically stressed faults. Now, when you're fracking and the fractures can connect to other fractures, with the result that you can release an awful lot of methane, extraordinary light gas. It will find a path of least resistance, will find its path away into other oil and gas wells. A very common occurrence in British Columbia is to frack into your neighbor's operation, with the result that you can also have extensive groundwater contamination from this process, which has been well documented throughout North America, Pennsylvania, Texas, Alberta, but there's very limited groundwater monitoring going on in this province. In fact, there are less than half a dozen groundwater monitoring wells for an area the size of France. The last point I want to make about fracking and why it is a hazardous technology has to do with an old and existing liability in the oil and gas industry. So the industry has drilled nearly 4.5 million wells in the ground in North America over the last 100 years, almost all of these wells are leaking to one degree or another various volumes of methane, everything from small amounts to so-called super emitters of methane. What fracking does, because fracking is really all about making small earthquakes in the ground, while you're shattering these rocks with this extreme force, you are destabilizing this existing infrastructure in the ground. And you are aggravating the existing problem of leaks, massive methane leaks from oil and gas wells, not only in British Columbia, but also in Alberta. The standard leak rate for BC, which has about 27,000 wells, is 10%. But 10% of your wells here are actively leaking, and the more you frack, the more you will aggravate those leaks. 5 LNG terminals, to fill 5 LNG terminals in this province, would require the drilling of an additional 50,000 wells and fracks. When fracks, we're talking in the millions here, anywhere from 25 to 50 fracks per well. Each frack job is using somewhere between 3 times more water than they use for the average fracks in the United States. So anywhere between 15 million to 25 million gallons of water. You have an industry down here that is poised to contaminate groundwater, to fragment the landscape of northern BC, to create, in the end, severe water shortages, and to generate, perhaps, unpredictable waves of seismic activity with unpredictable consequences for the rest of us. Thank you.